Alright, so remember the old Donkey Kong? Wasn't that fun with the old Super Nintendo? Well, lots of people think it is, and this Christmas we have pulled out our old Super Nintendo and we're going to show you how we got it working. So here we are, we've got it cabled up and sitting out, and these guys have never played Super Nintendo before, and they're loving it. Have you ever even played Donkey Kong before, Eric?
No, I have not.
And Eric will be beaten for that later. Bryn, have you played with it before?
Sure have.
You played Donkey Kong? Mm-hmm. And why is that?
It's my mom.
That's correct. All right, so let's see how we connect this thing.
When you decide to step up to this kind of power, this kind of challenge, this kind of flying, crashing, feeling, when you decide to get serious, there's only one place to come: the games of Super Nintendo. No one else creates this kind of experience, because no one else creates these kinds of games. Now you're playing with power, superpower.
Okay, so here we have an old Nintendo Super NES, and what we want to do is connect this from, its old self to a lovely, new, widescreen, high-definition, 50-inch flat screen. And that is not difficult, but it has some challenges for those who are used to just plugging things in and having them work, because it just won't. However, it's not very hard, so let's get to it. The first thing you have to do is flip the box up and look at the connectors. There is a multi-connector here, and what that does, that allows you to put out 3 different connectors, a left and a right audio and a video. There's also this sort of universal, it's called RF out, and what that does is send all the audio and the video through a single port. It's not quite as clear, but it's not bad, and for most people, that's what you're going to want to use. This little this little switch is channel 3 or channel 4. Back in the day, you used to, and I mean 80s, you used to have to set your television to channel 3 or 4 to have an external device like this come up. So for most people, you're going to want to set it on channel 3, but it really doesn't make a lot of difference. You can set it to either one as long as your TV is then set to that. So let's go through and plug this in. So I'm just going to move this back so it stands up by itself. This is the RF cable I'm going to plug in. Just an RCA jack that plugs in nicely. And here I have the power connector, and I'm going to plug that cleverly into power. And I'll turn that over, and just for fun, I'm going to plug a Donkey Kong game in here, and then I'm going to take the old school original Super Nintendo controllers, and I'm going to plug them in. So you can see these are a D shape, so you can't plug them in backwards. So let's plug that in there. Now you only need one, but I have 2, so I'm going to plug both in. You can see with this, there we go. And then on the Nintendo itself, you'll see that the up here, this power switch is not a button, it is a switch. So I can push it down for off, and I can push it up for on, and you'll see the little red light on the front come on. So back in the day, it was very difficult. In fact, it was not possible to change the color of an LED. So they are just going to be red. That's just the way LEDs were. So now we have to connect it to the television. And so how might you go about doing that? For the sake of a demonstration here, I have 2 RF adapters. And so the first one we've already plugged in, and this is just another one that I'm using to demonstrate to show you here. So here is a lovely RCA connector, and that's what I plugged in the back already. And at the other end of it is this guy. And you might say to yourself, what the heck is that? Well, what this is an RF converter, radio frequency converter. And it was used back in the day when people actually used antennas. What you would do is you would take your, right now we use coax. You take this and you plug it into where your antenna would go in the back, or where your cable goes today. If you're not using the cable box, which virtually everybody is. And if you're not following this, don't worry about it. I'll get to the point in a minute, but I will explain it for those who care. And at this end is where your antenna would go. And then what you could do is you could plug your antenna into here, or your cable TV, if you were one of the very few people that had it. And you could watch on the same TV, you could watch television, and you could watch, you could watch or you could play your games. And that's where the channel 3, channel 4 thing came in. You'd put it on, in this case, we set it to channel 3. So now I have to go to the back. I have to plug this cable into the coax connector at the back. So let's go do that. Okay, so there's the TV. Okay, so you can see here I have that RF connector I was telling you about, and you can see it runs all the way back to our lovely Nintendo, Super Nintendo in fact, and I'm going to take the coax connector and I'm going to go around the back of the TV and I'm going to plug it into the coax connection, which you can see is right there. So you ignore all the HDMI inputs, all of the other connectors that you may have at the back for left and right audio, just ignore all of those and simply plug this into the, well, sorry, you don't plug it in, you screw it in particular, into where your cable would go back in the day. So let's just do that. Okay, now make sure that's screwed in tight. If it's not in tight at both ends, and I'm saying at the coax end into the back of the TV, and the RCA jack, which is that round connector on the Nintendo itself, it's not going to work. It needs to be pushed in tight, nice and firm. So then you come back around to the front of the TV, and you turn it on. Okay, so we've turned on the TV, and now I'm going to press the input on my particular remote, which is, in this case, down here, and I have to change it from the cable box that we have, and I have to ignore the PlayStation connections I have and go all the way to what's actually old school TV connector. And look, it's there. Now that's because you can see in the top left corner here, I've set that to channel 4 or 3, just like the switch I have on the back of the Super Nintendo. If you're not getting a signal, you likely have one of two problems. Number one, you've not put the cables in firmly. Number two, you're probably on the wrong channel. Okay, so now we have it connected, and what we have to do now, as you can see, is set the screen resolution. This screen is too wide. This is a wide screen, and you can see everything's pixelated and fuzzy, and that's because when this content was made, the screens were only ratio-wise this wide. But in, you can see here, these nice 16 by 9 wide screens, or 16 by 10 even, yeah, that's much wider, and so everything looks pixelated. We need a 4 by 3 ratio. And if you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. What we have to do is go into the TV and change the settings. So that's what I'm going to do right now. That one. There we go. So here I'm going to go into settings now. But again, every TV is different, so I can't tell you specifically how to do it in yours. We're going to go to setup. I'm going to go down to picture. And probably, I'm not sure where this is, but I'm going to guess it's down into advanced settings here, although maybe not. Picture format, widescreen, that's not what we want. We want it to be, I don't know what the option is, but probably regular screen. 4 by 3, that's exactly what we want. So let's go up to that. There we go. Now let's just get out of this. Okay, so you can see it's still pixelated, and that's because originally this image was, 480 dots? And we have 1,080 dots here, so things are going to get stretched out. But you can see it's still much better than it was before. Things are the correct ratio. He's not really wide. Okay, so that's it. If you have any questions, please get a hold of us at www.urtech.ca. Thank you. Bye-bye.